Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in life, Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.
Okay, so we back in the building.
I'm up here talking and got my mic on mute. So we are back in the building. Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We have just officially sprang forward, however you pronounce it.
Spring forward.
Is it spring forward?
And fall back.
And fall back? Is that what we do, fall back?
We fall back.
So, yeah. So we're going to be getting into these CLBC bills. But before that, shall we do some housekeeping real quick? Reparationsnow.com. That's reparationsnow.com. Get all access, behind the scenes, etc.
Where?
Where? At reparationsnow.com?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's where you need to go to.
All right. And the theatrical release is also available to stream on Tubi TV.
Gotta get that merch. Go to etmmediagroupstore.com. That's etmmediagroupstore.com to get all your latest merch.
Also, use the ETM Amazon affiliate link to do all your Amazon shopping. Just click the link, should be in the description, before you do all the Amazon shopping that you do anyway.
And also on Amazon and actually on etmmediagroupstore.com, you can get the 2024 Cut the Check Reparations Now Planner. That's the 2024 Reparations Manifestation Planner.
All right. And Miss Darlene, can you tell us what we need to do to get to our reparations?
Yes, and good morning. We need 41 assembly members, 21 senators, and 1 governor to sign the reparations bill, and that would equal California reparations.
All right, and we need everybody to be aware of a piece of legislation, SB 490, which would create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, or CAFA office, which would, be the foundation and infrastructure to make all this reparations a reality. So let's take a look at what the rest of the reparations bills look like.
So I guess we'll start off with what ACR 135. Um, yeah, I know. I think they already went through, I guess, the assembly. Actually, we did show the hearing on right here on Amy in the Mass Media Group. So if you have a chance, go check that out. But I think Darlene, you're going to be starting off with this one.
Yes.
And if you need some help, let us know.
Not on this one, but on the other one. I think this one is fine.
All right, cool.
Okay. This one again. This is ACR 135: Human Rights Violations and Crimes Against Humanity on African Slaves and Their Descendants. It was revised February 26, 2024, amended in Assembly February 21st, 2024. California Legislature 2023 to 2024 regular session. Excuse me. And Assembly Concurrent Resolution number 135. It was introduced by Assembly Member Akila Weber and apologize for that. And the principal co-authors look like it is Assembly Members Bonta, Bryan, Gibson, Holden, Jackson, Jones, Sawyer, McCarthy, McKenna, and Wilson. Principal co-authors, Senator Bradford and Smallwood Curves, and this looks like the entire CLBC, and then a slew of other Assembly members have also co-authored and signed up for this bill. Okay. Legislative Council Digest. ACR 135 as amended, Weber, Human Rights Violations and Crimes Against Humanity on African Americans and Their Descendants. This measure would acknowledge the harms and atrocities committed by representatives of the state of California who promoted, facilitated, enforced, and permitted the institution of chattel slavery and the legacy of ongoing badges and incidents of slavery that form the systemic structures of discrimination. The measure would affirm the state of California's role in protecting the descendants of enslaved people as well as their civil, political, and social cultural rights. Fiscal Committee, no. Okay. Whereas this resolution may be cited as the, quote, acknowledgement of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity on African slaves and their descendants, end quote. And whereas the state of California, its executive, judicial, legislative branches denied African Americans their fundamental liberties and denied their humanity throughout the state's history from before the Civil War to the present. And whereas, although California entered the Union in 1850, outlawing slavery, the California Supreme Court stated that the anti-slavery law in California Constitution was only a, quote, declaration of a principle, end quote, and did not enact laws to enforce this provision and emancipate slaves. And whereas the California Supreme Court enforced the federal fugitive slave law until the official end of enslavement in 1865, and whereas the state of California prevented African Americans from testifying in court against a white person until 1863, and whereas the California legislature opposed Congress' Reconstruction Civil Rights Law and delayed ratifying the 14th and 15th Amendments to the federal Constitution, and whereas the state of California disenfranchised African American citizens through racial barriers to voting such as poll tax and literacy tests, and whereas the California legislature prohibited interracial marriages and passed anti-miscegenation law in its first legislative session in 1850, redacted interracial marriage was not allowed until 1959. The legislature repeatedly refused to repeal the law after the California Supreme Court struck it down in 1948 and only did so 11 years later. And whereas the state of California constructed monuments, memorials, state markers, and plaques memorializing and preserving Confederate culture and glorifying slavery and white supremacy. And whereas From the brutality of enslavement to contemporary police killing, state and local government sanctioned violence such as lynching, coercive sterilization, torture, and property destruction inflicted death, physical injuries, and psychological harms on African Americans in California. And whereas the state of California openly allows segregation and discrimination against African Americans with respect to musicians, workers, and artists, and whereas the state, local governments in California enacted restrictive zoning ordinances, licensing laws, fines, and safety codes, and anti-nuisance laws to disrupt African American businesses and their customers. And whereas discriminatory housing policies, including redlining, residential zoning ordinances, and loan practices have produced persistent and long-standing housing segregation and inequities in home ownership for African Americans in California. And whereas state and local governments in California targeted property owned by African Americans in urban renewal and development projects for unjust uses of eminent domain, often without providing just compensation. And whereas state and local segregation laws in California historically excluded African Americans from outdoor recreation, public transit, and other public infrastructure. And whereas the eugenics movement thrived in California and thousands of African Americans were forcibly sterilized or were subject of medical experimentations without consent, and whereas Black Californians experience persistent discrimination in healthcare services and access to inadequate diagnosis, use of involuntary force, high costs, and lack of culturally competitive services, and whereas African Americans have been routinely excluded from professional careers in California. For example, African American physicians, psychologists, and physicians are underrepresented in California's medical fields, further exacerbating the inequities of healthcare systems. And whereas California's child welfare system has experienced some of the worst racial disparities in the country, with African American children suffering the highest rate of system involvement and correspondingly heightened risks and harms associated with entering foster care, and now therefore be it resolved by the Assembly of the State of California, the Senate thereof concurring, that the State of California recognizes and accepts responsibility for all the harms and atrocities committed by representatives of the state who promoted, facilitated, enforced, and permitted the institution of chattel slavery and its legacy of ongoing badges and incidents of slavery that form the systemic structures of discrimination, and be it further resolved that the state of California now affirms its role in protecting the descendants of enslaved people as well as their civil, political, and social cultural rights, and be it further resolved that the chief clerk of the Assembly transmit copies of this resolution to the author of appropriate distribution. And that's it for that. And a lot of this, all of it is taken from Chapter 16 of the final report from the California Reparations Task Force. And one of the things I would like to point out that they did not list that the first governor in California was a white supremacist. They did not list that, nor did this resolution list the destruction of the Black Panther Party of self-defense that the structure of California did to infiltrate and help destroy that organization. And that is in Chapter 16.
Thank you for that, Darlene. Appreciate that. Excellent work. The first governor was Peter Burnett.
Peter Burnett. And he tried to outlaw blacks from coming into California, but it didn't pass.
Absolutely. All right, let's I believe the next one is 1815, so let's move to that one. All right, so Think you might be up next, right, ma'am?
Yes, and thank you, Darlene, for reading that acknowledgement resolution. So there we have it. The state of California is culpable, complicit, and guilty as charged. So on to Assembly Bill 1815, introduced by Assemblymember Weber, co-authors Assembly members Bonta, Bryan, Gibson, Holden, Jackson, Jones Sawyer, McCarthy, McKinnon, and Wilson, co-author Senator Bradford and Smallwood Cuevas. An act to add Section 53.8 to the Civil Code relating to discrimination. AB 1815 has introduced Weber discrimination, hairstyles, amateur sports organizations. Existing law. The California Fair Employment and Housing Act makes it unlawful to engage in specified discriminatory employment practices based on certain protected characteristics, including race, and unless based on a bona fide occupational qualification or applicable security regulations, and prohibits housing discrimination based on specified personal characteristics, including race. Existing law also prohibits discrimination because of a perception that a person has one of those protected characteristics or is associated with a person who has or is perceived to have any of those characteristics. Existing law defines the term race for purposes of these provisions to include traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture and protective hairstyles as defined. This bill would prohibit an amateur sports organization as defined from discriminating against any person on the basis of race, inclusive of traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture and protective hairstyles as defined in the operation, conduct, or administration of a youth or amateur sports competition, training, camp, or club. Vote majority, appropriation no, fiscal committee no, local program no. The people of the state of California do enact as follows. Section 1, Section 53.8 is added to the Civil Code immediately following 53.7 to read 53.8a. For purposes of this section, the following definition shall apply. 1. Amateur sports organization means an organization, business, nonprofit entity, or local governmental agency that sponsors or conducts youth or amateur sports competitions, training camps, or clubs. Quote, amateur sports organization, end quote, does not include collegiate sports organizations and professional sports organizations. 2. Quote, collegiate sports organization, end quote, means an athletic organization in which the participants are teams from a public or private institution of higher learning or an individual competing on behalf of a public or private institution of higher learning. 3. Quote, professional sports organization, end quote, means an athletic organization in which the participant receives compensation for competing in a sporting event. Any organization that qualifies as collegiate sports organization shall not be considered a professional sports organization, regardless of whether competitors are compensated. 4. Quote, protective hairstyles, end quote, includes, but is not limited to, such hairstyles as braids, locks, and twists. 5. Quote, race, end quote, is inclusive of traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture and protective hairstyles. B. An amateur sports organization shall not discriminate against any person on the basis of race in the operation, conduct, or administration of a youth or amateur sports competition, training, camp, or club within the state. And that's that.
All right, thanks for that, Kim. All right, devil's advocate. Just a question for you and Darlene. Um, could this be one, consider reparations, and two, is this a form of guarantees of non repetition?
That's a good question, you more. First of all, I'll say no to the reparation portion of it because it is discrimination, and you can kind of fit it into the guarantees of non-repetition, but it's still not, the full form of reparations because it is discrimination. That we've been kind of, let's face it, folks, we've been dealing with this since day one with our hair, especially, I'm not going to just say black women, but now black men, because they all wearing these kind of hairstyles. But I just don't see how they can and will be able to enforce this, unless these amateur sports organization has it in their contract that they won't discriminate. How can it be enforced?
Right. How could it be enforced unless they're planning to level some kind of sanction on funding
Yeah.
for these amateur sports organizations? But if you scroll up, it didn't look like there was any fiscal component to this. So, yeah, not quite sure how that's going to work. Let's see here. Can you scroll down a little bit? I had a question on let's see, existing law discrimination. Well, and I'll just say another thing. They talk about race, but there's nothing about lineage or an eligibility class that this would protect. So it appears to be for everybody. So I would have to say no to
No.
reparations.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. So,
Mhm.
well, all right.
And then I don't, and this specified personal characteristics. I guess it's just their language, but that didn't quite set right with me.
A bona fide occupational qualification. What could that be? A bona fide occupational qualification, because it says unless, including race, unless based on a bona fide occupational qualification.
Well, wouldn't that be if you have like really, and I'm not even talking about locks or twists, but if you have really long hair, it could get caught in certain machines if it's not tied up, or I would think something like that.
Okay.
That's
okay.
a safety hazard.
Okay. Or applicable security regulations.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you. Good reading, Kim. Appreciate you. And Darlene, it's gonna be hard to follow up with that one, but I'm gonna try my best here. All right, so we got Senator Bradford here. SB 1050, California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, racially motivated eminent domain. California Legislature 2023-2024 regular session, number 1050, Senate bill introduced by Senator Bradford, co-author Senator Smallwood Cuevas, and co-author Assemblymember Jackson. All right. An act to add Chapter 4, commencing with Section 16005 to Part 14 of Division 3 of Title 2 of the Government Code relating to state government. SB 1050, as introduced, Bradford, California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, racially motivated eminent domain. Existing law establishes until January 1st, 2030, the Racial Equity Commission within the Office of Planning and Research, and requires the commission to develop resources, best practices, and tools for advancing racial equity by, among other things, developing a statewide racial equity framework, that includes methodologies and tools that can be employed to advance racial equality and address structural racism in California. All right. Kind of want to go back to that one, but we'll continue. This bill would require the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, which would be established within the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency as provided by SB 490 of the 2023-2024 regular session, to, upon appropriation by the legislature, create and update a database of people who have had property taken from them by the state without just compensation as a result of racially motivated eminent domain as provided. The bill would define, quote, racially motivated eminent domain, end quote, to mean when the state acquires private property for public use and does not distribute just compensation at the time of the taking due to racist or discriminatory motives. The bill would authorize the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to distribute just compensation to a person identified in that database for the present day fair market value of the property that was taken from them by the state as a result of racially motivated eminent domain. If the Chief Financial Officer determines that issuing just compensation to that person would serve to redress past acts of racial discrimination, prevent future acts of racial discrimination, and benefit the whole of the community and its general welfare. This bill would also require the Office of Strategic Communications and Media Affairs, which would be established within the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency as provided by SB 490 of 2023 and 2024 regular session, to develop and implement a public education campaign regarding discriminatory housing and urban planning practices by the state as specified. See here. This bill would make findings and declarations related to a gift of public funds. Vote majority appropriation no. Fiscal committee yes. Local program no. The people of the state of California do enact as follows. Section 1, Chapter 4, commencing with Section 16005, is added to Part 14 of Division 3 of Title 2 of the Government Code to read. Chapter 4, restitution for race-based eminent domain. 16005A, for purposes for the section, the following definitions apply. 1, quote, racially motivated eminent domain, end quote, means when the state acquires private property for public use and does not distribute just compensation at the time of the taking due to racist or discriminatory motives. 2, quote, rightful owner, end quote, means a person who has had property taken from them by the state without just compensation as a result of racially motivated eminent domain. B, upon appropriation by the legislature, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer within the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency shall do the following. 1, research and document state properties acquired as a result of racially motivated eminent domain and document the person who owned that property when it was acquired by the state. 2, review and investigate public complaints from people who claim their property was taken without just compensation as a result of racially motivated eminent domain. 3, by January 1st, 2026, create a database to be updated annually thereafter of rightful owners identified pursuant to paragraph 1 and confirmed to have been the victim of racially motivated eminent domain after investigation pursuant to paragraph 2. C1, subject to paragraph 2, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer may distribute, upon appropriation by the legislature, just compensation to a rightful owner identified in the database created pursuant to paragraph 3 of Division B for the present day fair market value of the property that was taken from them by the state as a result of racially motivated eminent domain. 2, just compensation shall be distributed only upon a determination by the Chief Financial Officer that issuing just compensation to that rightful owner would serve to redress past acts of racial discrimination, prevent future acts of racial discrimination, and benefit the whole of the community and its general welfare. 16006, the Office of Strategic Communications and Media Affairs within the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency shall develop and implement a public education campaign regarding the cycle of gentrification, displacement, and exclusion, the connection between redlining and gentrification, and the history of discriminatory urban planning in the state. Section 2, The legislature finds and declares that the addition of Chapter 4, commencing with Section 16005 to Part 14 of Division 3 of Title 2 of the Government Code by this act serves a public purpose and does not constitute a gift of public funds within the meaning of Section 6 of Article XVI of the California Constitution by redressing past acts of racial discrimination, preventing future acts of racial discrimination, and benefiting the whole of the community and its general welfare. Whew. All right. So I guess for me and Kim Darlene, if you want to chime in, one, I am maybe I missed it, but I didn't see any lineage based language in here. Did you guys see any lineage based?
No, they actually say race base.
Yeah, I did see race based. So I think that needs to be updated because we need specificity, like in everything. Race based might be a problem. I don't know. I mean, I think one of my concerns is how do you, if we're basing it off of race, right? And say like, one of our descendants, or maybe you were discriminated against. How can you prove that, it was race based if you were eminent domain, or just because you were in a certain area?
It doesn't say anything about redlined areas or no? Yeah, well, I also picked up on the word investigation, so it sounds like investigations are going to be had into determining, the rightful owner is the terminology that they use, which I picked up on. Rightful owner. A lot of this eminent domain takings occurred, a long time ago. Shouldn't it say rightful owners and their heirs or their heirs?
Yeah, absolutely, their heirs. Yes, absolutely. And another thing that's interesting, and thank you for that, Kim, because another thing that's interesting, none of these acts that they proclaim to quote unquote investigate within this SB 1050 can happen without SB 490.
Right.
It can't happen. Even the positions, the CFO, the Office of Strategic Communications. I mean, none of it can happen with without SB 490. None of it. So,
I think this bill needs some revision. Definitely the heirs needs to be included in here because some of our ancestors passed away, like my aunt. She got eminent domain. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think, I don't know. Well, no, I know she didn't have any children, so I guess that'd be passed down into either my dad or my, I guess either my dad or my aunt, if anything, and then, then it'll be passed down to the next generation. But yeah, this bill definitely needs some updates. I like the start of it though. Good start. But yeah, I think some updates need to be made to this one.
So especially when it does say racially motivated eminent domain. Well, there was a lot of that going on in California, not only to descendants, so to other groups. So if this is for us, you're absolutely correct. It needs to say descendants and their heirs. Yes.
And I'm trying to see if it gives a date. Okay. So I don't see, because usually it says something like, or maybe it's referring to another bill that does mention when. Okay, existing law establishes until January 1st, 2030, the racial. Okay. I don't know.
No, there was another date, Umoya, about 120, January 26th. There was another date in there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
What are you looking for, like the start date?
Yeah,
like when they would start these.
It was 126, if I'm not mistaken. It was January 2026. I specifically remember seeing that date.
No, but the start date of when the eminent
Yeah.
domain
Oh,
takings
January
occurred.
1,
I
20.
just say
Create a
just start
database. Yeah.
with 1849.
Mm. Yeah, so I think so. There's a couple things that need to be updated. So I don't see anything saying when these acts took place. So that probably needs to be updated as well.
The time
Um,
period of the eminent
yeah,
domains. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, no, this is a good start. And it's kind of funny, like when we first started, really getting into legislation, um, like who would have thought that we'd like be into this and being like, oh yeah, they need these amendments, right? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, man, shout out to what we're doing. Appreciate y'all and those who are listening and those who will be listening to this. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email us at etnmediagroup.com. That's etnmediagroup.com. Ugh, dump. My bad. Uh, email us at etnmediagroup at gmail.com. That's etnmediagroup at gmail.com. All right, so let's go to the
And
next
you
one.
more, can I
What
just
else you guys
piggyback
wanna say?
onto what
Oh,
you're
yeah, yeah.
saying? You know why it's easy for us to get into these legislative bills? Because now we're seeing that these really affect us. A lot of times you go through, oh, these bills don't have anything to do with me, but they absolutely do. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's been a motivating factor for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Amend
Hmm.
the reparations priority package.
Absolutely. All right, Darlene. So I guess we'll do this. This is a formal apology, AB 3089.
Hmm.
If you want to take maybe one or two or three pages, and then if Kim wants to, and then I don't know, I'll wrap it up or something like that. If that
Okay,
sounds good
and
to y'all.
if I can, after we finish reading AB 3089, I would like to read something specifically from chapter 16, which this information is also taken from. That's very important to the apology, official apology, formal apology that was left out of this bill. So, okay,
All
I'll
right.
start and then, okay, and if I can start and I'll hand it over to you, Kim, please.
Yep.
Okay, AB 3089, Chattel Slavery Formal Apology, 2023 to 2024. California Legislature 2023 to 2024 Regular Session, Assembly Bill number 3089, introduced by Assembly Member Joan Sawyer, Bonta, Bryant, Gibson, Holden, Jackson, McCarthy, McKenna, Weber, and Wilson. Principal co-authors Senators Bradford and Smallwood Cuevas. February 16, 2024. An act to add Chapter 4.5, quote, commencing with Section 8301, end quote, to Division 1 of Title II of the Government Code relating to state government. Legislative Council Digest. AB 3089 as introduced, Joan Sawyer, Chattel Slavery Formal Apology. Previously existing law established until 123 the task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons of enslaved in the United States. Previously existing law required the task force to, among other things, identify, compile, synthesize the relevant corpus of evidentiary documentation of the Institute of Slavery that existed within the United States and the colonies that became the United States as specified, and to recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the task force findings as specified. Previously existing law required the task force to submit a written report of its findings and recommendations to the legislature as specified. This bill would provide that the state of California recognizes and accepts responsibility for all the harms and atrocities committed by the state, its representatives thereof, and the entities under its jurisdiction who promoted, facilitated, enforced, and permitted the institution of chattel slavery and the enduring legacy of ongoing badges and incidents from which the systemic structures of discrimination have come to exist. The bill would further provide that the state of California accepts its responsibility with a formal apology of the harms perpetrated by the state and orders this apology to be memorialized in the form of a proclamation to be publicly and conspicuously displayed permanently in the California State Capitol building. This bill will require the legislature to prepare the formal apology proclamation, which will be signed by the Pacific state leaders. Additionally, the bill will require the Secretary of State to submit a final copy of this formal apology proclamation to the state archives, where it will be available for viewing by the general public in its perpetuity. The bill would include related legislative findings. The people of the state of California do and act as follows. Section 1, Chapter 4.5, quote, commencing with Section 8301, end quote, is added to Division 1 of Title 2 of the Government Code to read. So can I go ahead and give that part to you, Kim?
Okay. Where are we starting at?
The people of the state of California do and act as follows. Second page.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at the top where it says section.
At the okay, at the top. Okay. I'm with you. I mean, we did lose an hour, but I'm hanging in. Okay. The people of the state of California do and act as follows. Section 1, Chapter 4.5, commencing with Section 8301, is added to Division 1 of Title 2 of the Government Code to read. Chapter 4.5, Apology Act for the participation of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity with special consideration for African slaves and their descendants. Article 1, Findings and Declarations. 8301, this chapter shall be known and may be cited as the, quote, Apology Act for the perpetration of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity with special consideration for African slaves and their descendants, end quote. 8301.1a, the legislature finds and declares all the following. 1. In 2020, the people of California established the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Task force and required the task force to address, among other things, how the state of California will offer a formal apology on behalf of the people of California for the perpetration of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity on African slaves and their descendants, and how California laws and policies that continue to disproportionately and negatively affect African Americans as a group and perpetuate the lingering material and psychosocial effects of slavery can be eliminated. 2. Based on the task force evidentiary findings and recommendations outlined in the report to the legislature as required by the statute, the people of the state of California hereby acknowledge being a beneficiary of the forced enslavement of African slaves brought to California and continuing to the subordination of Black Californians. 3. Well after California entered the Union and declared itself a free state outlawing slavery, more than 2,000 enslaved African people were brought to California from 1850 to 1860. 4. The California Supreme Court enforced fugitive slave laws until 1865, stating that the anti-slavery law in the California Constitution was merely a, quote, declaration of principle, end quote. 5. Throughout the state's history, California's executive, judicial, and legislative branches continuously denied African slaves and their descendants basic humanity and fundamental liberties from before the Civil War to the present. 6. Moreover, California's cities, counties, special districts, joint powers authorities, and other quasi-governmental entities exerted demonstrable undue pressure upon African slaves and Black Californians throughout the territory. 7. California industries benefited from ill-gotten gains based on chattel slavery in the form of agriculture and other industrial production. The state of California should consider reviewing these gains in order to potentially fund reparatory efforts. 8. California courts prevented Black citizens from testifying in legal proceedings against a white person, and California's legislator vehemently opposed congressional civil rights laws and delayed ratification of the 14th and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution, hindering Black Americans the right to citizenship, due process under the law, and right to vote. 9. California further disenfranchised Black Californians by enacting deliberate racial barriers such as poll taxes and literacy tests, prohibiting interracial marriage, and passing anti-miscegenation laws in its first legislative session in 1850. 10. California constructed monuments, memorials, markers, and plaques to preserve and memorialize Confederate principles glorifying subjugation, slavery, and white supremacy. 11. From the brutality of enslavement to modern-day police killings, state-sanctioned violence at all levels of government, such as lynching, coercive sterilization, torture, and property destruction, inflicted death, physical injury, and psychological harm on Black Californians. 12. California openly sanctioned widespread segregation and discrimination against African Americans in workplaces, educational facilities, and public spaces, and enacted predatory licensing laws, fire and safety codes, and anti-nuisance laws to disrupt African American businesses and patrons. 13. Discriminatory housing policies, including redlining, residential zoning ordinances, and loan practices, produce persistent housing segregation and longstanding inequities in home ownerships for Black Californians. 14. State and local governments targeted property owned by African Americans for renewal and development projects, employing unjust uses of eminent domain, often without providing just compensation. Yet those same authorities enacted and enforced laws that historically excluded African Americans from outdoor recreation, public transit, and other public infrastructure. 15. The eugenics movement thrived in California, and thousands of African Americans were forcibly sterilized or were subjects of medical experiments without valid consent. B. According to the United Nations Principles on Reparations, an apology, when combined with material forms of reparations, provides an opportunity for communal reckoning with the past and repair for moral, physical, and dignitary harms.
All right, Kim. You want me to take the last 2 pages? I think
Yes.
there's 2 more.
Yes,
All right,
please.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. Article 2, recognition and acceptance of responsibility for harms and atrocities committed, formal apology proclamation. 8301. Is that 8301 2A? The state of California recognizes and accepts responsibility for all of the harms and atrocities committed by the state, its representatives thereof, and entities under its jurisdiction who promoted, facilitated, enforced, and permitted the institution of chattel slavery and the enduring legacy of ongoing badges and incidents from which the systemic structures of discrimination have come to exist. B. The state of California accepts this responsibility with a formal apology for the harms perpetrated by the state and hereby orders this apology to be memorialized in the form of a proclamation to be publicly and conspicuously displayed permanently in the California State Capitol building. C. The legislature shall prepare the formal apology proclamation, which shall bear the great seal of this state and be signed by the Speaker of the Assembly, the President pro tempore of the Senate, the Governor, and the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. D. The Secretary of State shall submit a final copy of this formal apology proclamation to the state archives, where it shall be available for viewing by the general public in perpetuity. 83013. The formal apology proclamation, pursuant to Section 83012, shall contain the following written components. A. The written findings of all the harms and atrocities committed as set forth in Section 83011. B. The written acknowledgement and acceptance of responsibility of harms as set forth in subdivisions A and B of Section 83012. C. Inclusion of the following statement in its entirety. Quote, the state of California apologizes for perpetuating the harms African Americans face by having imbued racial prejudice through segregation, public and private discrimination, and unequal dispersal of state and federal funding, and declares that such actions shall not be repeated. The state of California acknowledges the work of the task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. This task force, established by Assembly Bill 3121, 2020, detailed the harms faced by African Americans in California and provided numerous legislative recommendations, including this formal apology. The state of California affirms its role in protecting the descendants of enslaved people and all Black Californians, as well as their civil, political, and socio-cultural rights. California acknowledges and affirms its responsibility to end ongoing harm. The state of California commits to restore and repair affected peoples with actions beyond this apology, end quote.
Oh,
So I know,
wow.
Darlene, you mentioned you wanted to read something.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Kim and Umoria for stepping in as well. Great. I just want to also read something from, again, Chapter 16 of the California Reparations Task Force Final Report. And Chapter 16 is entitled Recommendation for a California Apology. And this is found on page 601, which would have really put teeth and strengthened this bill. Okay, it starts, in addition to acknowledging these and other atrocities committed by the state as delineated in this report, the legislature's formal apology should also acknowledge California's responsibility to repair the harms and guarantee non-repetition. To be effective, a considerable number of survivors and their relatives must participate in the development of the apology. As occurred with the apology to the California tribal community, the legislation should establish a program of governing body such as the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency to facilitate listening sessions that allow victims and their relatives to narrate personal experiences and recount specific injustices caused by the state of California. The listening sessions should inform the language of legislation apology and the methods enacted by the legislature to satisfy victims. In rendering its apology, the legislature should also find a way to effect specific recognition of all who come forward to participate in these listening sessions and share their personal stories of harm, loss, deprivations, and of liberty. Again, even with the apology, it must be filtered through SB 490. So I want to emphasize that. And also it's saying that we as the community should be involved in this process.
Well, it says that in the final report, but it sounds like they cherry picked what they wanted to put in the legislation.
They cherry picked.
This
is page 601. 601. Read it for yourself, family. 601. They cherry pick what they want. ACR 135 and then this bill AB 3089 both come from out of Chapter 16. As you can read and listening to both of them, you would have several duplicates of what they're asking for in this bill. But they left out that it should be structured through SB 490.
So, is that something that you think should be amended for 3089 to include, in addition
Yes,
to the information on the Black Panthers and what else was it that was left out of the acknowledgement?
the
Um,
first racist governor, Peter Harvey. Hmm. I do.
okay, so Darlene, what I actually pulled up the final report here. What was the page number?
601.
601. Okay. Now I don't know on this digital document if it's actually going to go to the same page, but let's see if it does it. All right. And is it, you said chapter 16?
Yes.
All right, so let's see here. You said
601.
formal
You're getting
apology.
close. You're getting close.
There it is.
Is this it?
Well,
Yeah.
this is 16, but 601 is down a little bit.
Okay. So let me
601
know.
is the last full page of the chapter before the and for the end notes.
Oh,
before
okay,
the
got
end
you.
note.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Here we go. We're getting close here.
Yeah, you can.
We're gonna get there.
You're getting hot. You're getting hot.
Getting hot.
I guess my point that I'm making is that even everything should flow through our agency, through our infrastructure.
All right, so here's 601 on the report.
And it starts in addition. You passed it, you Morgan. Where it says
okay.
in addition.
In addition to
Right there, in addition,
acknowledging.
acknowledging.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And other atrocities are delineated as a okay. So, all right. So you're saying, Darlene, if I'm correct, that they basically took most of this information here and then cherry picked it and put it into the apology.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Even something
think-
as an apology, you need an infrastructure. So we as a community can express our injustices, our stories.
Mm,
And that's
yeah,
powerful.
good point.
I mean, how many listening sessions have, ETM, CJEC, Ardbury area have attended and facilitated? And the hearing from the community is just so powerful.
Absolutely.
We're not an island. Yeah, we're not in this alone.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Once again, we've learned, even if we vehemently, well, not let me say vehemently, but let's just say even if we do disagree that these bills aren't specifically lineage-based reparations bills, it's good to go through these bills to actually see what some of these legislation wording is saying, right? So we understand what the California Legislative Black Caucus is deeming to be priority bills for them. In addition to that, before we get out of here, every Thursday, you can go to CJEC's YouTube page at CJEC-official. Go to that YouTube page every Thursday. Volunteers and also others are reading from the California Reparations Task Force final report. You can check that out Thursdays at 7 a.m. And if you do miss it live, you can check on the replay. So I think that's about it. We have a couple more to go. And then I think after we get done with the priority bills, we'll probably read some other bills that, we believe that is beneficial. That's not a priority for the CLBC, but will be going through the legislative process.
Okay.
Maybe not a priority for the CLBC, but some may be a priority to us and the other community at large.
Absolutely. And one day they are actually going to write a bill for cash reparations.
we counting on it. Yes.
We're counting on that day.
Yes.
So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Kim or Darlene, if you have nothing else to say, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here.
No, I'm not. Thank you. Good readings to all.
Yeah, just get involved, and the main thing is to remain informed, be knowledgeable, and express your concerns if you have any to our legislative body, CLBCs or otherwise.
That's to everyone. You can. Every legislator, not just the CLBC. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, everybody have a wonderful, if you are in a zone that is time changed, good luck. I hope you're adapting to it. Man, I don't know about y'all, but man,
I'm going
every
back
year
to bed after this.
I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, I'm feeling you on that one. Every year, it's just like, my gosh, there's supposedly going to be supposedly I was reading something where California did pass to have what quote unquote standard time, so the time wouldn't change. But from my understanding, the federal government has to approve it, and so the federal government hasn't approved it. So that's kind of where we're at right now, which is just nuts. Because I'm like, man, just hurry up. You know what I mean? Like, can we just get to a standard time and not have to worry about because this is a health issue. It's like, man, we're just used to, having our circadian rhythm, and then you just throw us off with this, then we got to spring forward or fall backward. I mean, dude, and the excuses that they make up. Oh, well, it's because of this. Dude, what I know is from our perspective, the sun comes up and then the sun goes down. That's what, and we got daylight and then we don't have daylight. That's what I know. And so anything else that you're talking about, I don't know if you're making stuff up, but it might be good. But we definitely need a standard time, because this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to work in the farming industry, I know that they closely watched this daylight saving things, and it was all about, wanting to make sure they squeeze every last minute of work out of you that they can during those times without paying overtime is what the issue was. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, everyone have a wonderful day, and including in this time change. And we, Kim, Darlene, I always appreciate you. Appreciate everyone for watching, staying informed, and tuned in, and being educated, and taking action. And by the way, Darlene, I loved when you kept saying and, whereas.
Oh, and. Yeah. Thank you. But that was also to help me catch my breath as well. Those whereas can be kind of, and whereas, and.
Well, but thank you. It is resoluted.
Yes. It is resoluted. Well, and on that note, everyone have a wonderful day. As always, take care of yourself. We're out. Peace and reparations.
SB 490, introduced by Senator Stephen Bradford, is the first legislation that will create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency.
The CAFA agency is a recommendation from the California Reparations Task Force final report.
Possible offices within the agency could include genealogy, strategic communications, data research collection,
as well as general counsel with social services and family affairs.
Tell your representative to support the upcoming 2024 reparations legislation.
Find them at findyourrep.legislature.ca.gov.